heel in the WWE right now?
Kevin Owens.
Kevin Owens, yeah.
He's one of my favorite wrestlers, period. But he's a heel, so.
Yeah.
But he's a very good Canadian guy, and he's really hard working wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think, and he looks like a wrestler.
Yeah.
You know, too many of the wrestlers today. I've heard some people say they don't like that he's kind of heavy. He's a big, solid-looking guy. I wouldn't say he's a fat guy at all. I mean, when I think of fat, I think of fat.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like, he looks like a brick house. Like he looks solid as a rock. And he moves like a 100-pounder. You know, he's doing stuff that no big man ever dreamed of doing that I've ever seen. Even some of the great big men like Bam Bam Bigelow, and you know, there's been a lot of big men that were really agile and quick and had a lot of wrestling skills and stuff like that. But Kevin Owens is he's, to me, is my number one favorite wrestler in wrestling right now.
Is there any questions coming in there from people?
Any thoughts on CM Punk stuff? Yeah. Do I answer that?
Yeah, you can answer whichever one of these questions you want.
I love CM Punk stuff. I sorely miss him. Wrestling's never been the same without him. He was the best of the last generation. He really raised the bar. He's was a great innovator, had a great sense of psychology, and he stood up for all the right things. And any wrestler today that, because I know a lot of, I hear on the independent circuit and wrestlers that are sort of starting out resent him today for walking off. But I think if they really look closely at what happened, he stood up for all the right reasons and said what needed to be said and did what needed to be done. And I got nothing but respect for him. I think he took a bullet for every wrestler. Okay, have you think Hulk Hogan will ever be back in the WWE? Let's hope not. You know, let's really hope that he, you know, lives with himself in Tampa and stays there and in his little world of, you know, idol worship of himself. I'm not a big Hulk Hogan fan. I kind of feel bad for him because I don't remember him necessarily being a racist, but, you know, I can say that through my experience that a vast majority, of course not all of them, but there's a vast majority of the white Southern wrestlers tend to be a little bit racial all the time, and the N-word was frequently used by a lot of wrestlers in the dressing room when there was a black guy not around, kind of thing. And being a Canadian, I found that really difficult. I didn't see eye to eye with that kind of stuff, and I've never felt like that, and I've never been in that kind of mindset. But for Hulk Hogan to make the comments that he made is something that if you've had a camera like that in most of the dressing rooms with a lot of the Southern wrestlers from Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi, even Texas, you get a lot of that kind of slant on things. And I'm kind of glad he got busted for that reason, that times have changed and, you know, you have to answer for that stuff, and he's answering for it. He's probably glad that Roddy Piper passed away because it took all the edge off all that. Who do I keep in touch with from my wrestling days? Well, I used to stay in touch a lot with Roddy Piper, which is kind of sad because he's probably the one guy I stayed in touch with the most, and he's no longer around, and I sorely miss him. But I talked to Steve Austin. I talked to I stay in touch a lot with CM Punk. I talked to the Bella Twins, and I talked to my niece Natty. I talked to Tyson Kidd. I have a lot of, you know, I talk to a lot of the young wrestlers and the old wrestlers. Unfortunately, some of the best wrestlers from my generation are not around anymore, unless you want to talk to Jake Roberts, which is kind of like, who wants to do that? Anyway, I'm going to look at another question here. When's the next time you'll be around Saskatchewan? No plans anytime soon to be in Saskatchewan. Who's the best technical wrestler today? I would think, you know, if you want to watch wrestling and learn how to actually do wrestling, you might watch Cody Rhodes. He's technique-wise, I mean, everything he does, from his kicks and his punches and his his actual doing the moves, he does it as good as anybody. Or for that matter, Goldust is really good. But, Seth Rollins is a great wrestler. I have nothing but respect for him. He's been a good champion. He's a hard-working wrestler. Although I can't say I forgive him for kneeing John Cena in the face the way he did, just because you can't make mistakes like that in a pro wrestling ring, and can't call yourself a great wrestler when you make those kind of mistakes. Best finisher ever? Sharpshooter. Most underrated wrestler of all time? I think Tyson Kidd was really underrated. Probably is one of the best in the world for a long time, and I hope he gets back in the ring and gets another chance to show people how great he was. But, he's one of those wrestlers you don't really appreciate till he's gone, and he was a guy that was just on the verge of maybe establishing what a great wrestler he was with a lot of fans, and it's a shame he got injured when he did. My best match ever is one of the questions. I think my best match ever was probably the Iron Man match, but at the same time, I think the match I had with Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13, just a piece of art, just a real great match, great storyline, great psychology, no wasted moves. I watched SummerSlam and I see so many great moves, and then I just see the wrestlers just get back up and do another silly high spot and then do the pinfall. They should have better producers or people that put these matches together and teach them how to. You always build your match up, you never build down, and they sometimes take great moves. I see now they're starting to use the sharpshooter as a high spot where they just put it on and people get to the ropes every time. Pisses me off sometimes. And same with Steve Austin's Stone Cold Stunner. They turned that into a high spot. I think that stupidity prevails everywhere. I think Vince McMahon had a finger on the pulse of what wrestling fans on what needed to be done in the ring, and what he had a big say in how matches were put together. But that's all been designated down to guys that have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And I'm really disappointed in a lot of the people that are the ones handling the wrestlers' matches and stuff like that. But what can you do? Vince McMahon can't be everywhere. My real name is Bret. Hart. Hitman is a moniker. Is Owen going to be in the Hall of Fame? He should be. I'm hoping this year he'll be inducted, not this year, but next year, WrestleMania, that he'll be inducted. I'll be really sorely disappointed if he's not. I think it's way overdue. I'm looking forward to the DVD that WWE's got coming out of my brother Owen, although I have reservations about it because it seemed like it was so controlled and they were so careful and tiptoeing around, not even wanting to offend Owen's widow, who I think has totally made an ass of herself and has really pissed me off because she's done more to erase Owen's career and his legacy and sort of erase who he was and what a great, all the fans that loved Owen. And she doesn't want them to enjoy him today, and we should relish in all his memories. When I think of Owen, we should dig up all his matches and all his interviews and all the fun things he did and have wrestlers talk about it. It's great, the great memories and stories they have with him. And his kids should hear those stories and know who their dad was. But Martha is very anal in the sense that she can't get over what happened, which is unfortunate. But for God's sake, she got to move on. Now she's got a doctor's degree, and she's a doctor of psychology. She got to analyze her own brain and see that you can't just erase all the good things about somebody just because he died. Could Stu beat Chuck Norris? Yeah, he could stand on Chuck Norris's back and pull his arms and legs off anytime he wanted. I see there's... Is Kevin Owens going to be a superstar? Yes, he's going to be a superstar. He already is one. You just got to see it to believe it. Let's see what else we got here. Conor McGregor fan. I want to say I am, but I'm not sure who he even is. No Stu impressions. I'm too tired. please tell Vince I missed it. Toughest part of being a wrestler, travel schedule, being away from home. It's tough being a wrestler. I work 300 days a year, and I imagine today they're working about 250 days a year. It's tough. It's not an easy way to make a living, and it's exciting and it's fun, but it's tough. Yeah, Stephanie's hot. These are going so fast. What NHL team do I support? Calgary Flames, of course. I'm also a big Oilers fan, so I'm kind of torn in the middle. I'm thinking that this year there's going to be some great hockey between Calgary and Edmonton. I'm also thinking that Toronto is going to turn things around. I don't know if they'll be I don't know if they'll win the Stanley Cup or anything, but I think they'll certainly turn things around. I think the Canadian teams are really going to kick ass this year. Calgary in particular, I think are going to really respond to the support they got from all their fans. We've been waiting up there for a long time for a kind of Calgary Flames rebound, and I think we got one. We got one going. My favorite beer, Heineken, light. Let's see what else we got. What do I think of Brock Lesnar? I think Brock Lesnar is an awesome wrestler. I think, I'm really impressed with some of his last 4 or 5 pay-per-view matches have been some of the greatest matches in the history of wrestling. In particular, his matches with Daniel Bryan were really good. CM Punk really good. I think Undertaker, the match he had with Undertaker a few years ago was just awesome. I think Undertaker's he's just a great wrestler, and Brock Lesnar, he's obviously a tough guy and a great athlete, but he's got a unique ability as a professional wrestler, which is a whole different thing than UFC, and he's won me over. He's got great psychology, and he's a great wrestler. What was my favorite time to be wrestling? In the 97 era was my favorite. It was some great days. That whole Canada-US rivalry thing we got going was so much fun, and it was so much heart in it. Literally, with the Hart Foundation, we really, we just loved what we were doing. We had a lot of fun with that, and it was a very unique experience to be a good guy in Canada and a bad guy in the United States, and we pulled that off really well. I don't know if the Bulldog or Bulldogs will ever get in the Hall of Fame. They should. Same with the Demolition. They should be in the Hall of Fame. And, of course, the Hart Foundation as a tag team, Jim the Animal and Neidhart, myself. What kind of Hall of Fame doesn't have the Hart Foundation in? Not a very good one, if you ask me. If they don't put Owen in this next year, I probably won't go to any more after that. And I probably won't go until they induct Jim the Anvil and myself for the Hart Foundation. I'm hoping maybe this next year in Dallas when they have WrestleMania that they'll induct the whole Hart Foundation from Pillman and Owen and Davey Boy and Jim the Anvil. I think we all belong in there for what we did, and how they go about doing it, whether it's as a tag team or whether it's the 5 of us, it should happen. What kind of Hall of Fame can it be without us? Stu's in. Stu's covered. Do I like Hulk Hogan? No, I don't. I think he's a phony piece of shit. I'm waiting for the next question.
You want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with March of Dimes in this little space here before we wrap up?
Well, I'm here for March of Dimes, Stroke Recovery. I'm the spokesperson for Stroke Recovery. And I come from a position of experience. I went through a whole stroke, suffered a stroke in 2002. I went through a really tough time. I was very fearful that I would never get any kind of recovery back. Those of you that are watching this, you might notice that my left side gets a little bit droopy on one side. And that was the least of my worries. I mean, I was worried about Ever getting out of my wheelchair was my biggest concern. I was in a wheelchair for 3 months, and I lost everything on my left side when I suffered a stroke. And I slowly started to recover, and there was a lot of people that were involved in my recovery, from physio people to nurses, and just the whole March of Dimes organization. And I just think that you got to keep your hopes alive, and someone like me to come back. I know for me, Walter Gretzky called me one time in the early stages of my stroke and gave me a pep talk, and it made a big difference. It inspired me to get better and not to give up. And that's what I try to do today. I try to reach out to stroke survivors and say, keep trying. Every day gets a little better, and it does. And you just got to keep making people see it that way. All right, well, I think this is it for me.
Yeah. Just thank the fans. And
thank all the fans. Thanks for missing Owen. Thanks for listening to me. And, help anyone you know that suffered a stroke. They need your help.